You're listening to The Secrets of Star Trek, where we discuss the hidden layers and deeper meanings found in all the Star Trek TV series, movies, and more. And today we're discussing the penultimate episode of Lower Decks. I know that some fans like when we say penultimate. The penultimate episode of Lower Decks called Fissure Quest. I'm probably saying it wrong. I'm Dom Bettinelli.
Quest.
Fissure. Thank you. I'm Dom Bettinelli, and joining me today on the panel are Jimmy Akin. Hey, Jimmy.
Howdy, Dom.
And Father Jason Tyler. Hey, Father.
Hello.
Folks, be sure to stick around to the... Well, actually, I have a note, too, that we have feedback, but we don't. So I messed that part up. But do stick around to the end of the episode because it's a great episode we're going to have here. Remember to like The Secrets of Star Trek on our Facebook page, facebook.com/StarQuestMedia. Retweet us on X, where we're at SQPN. Leave us comments wherever you find us. We're also now on TikTok and on Instagram Reels. So sure to find us on all the different social media. And I want to tell you about another show on the Star Quest Network I'm sure you'll enjoy called The Secrets of Stargate, which you can find wherever fine podcasts are found or at sqpn.com/Stargate. So, Jimmy, can you give us a recap of what happens in Fissure Quest?
This week, our lower deckers are thinking about William Boimler, the transporter clone of Brad Boimler that went on board the Titan and apparently died, although unbeknownst to them, he didn't die. Section 31 faked his death and has sent him on a mission to find whoever is behind the quantum rifts that are tearing apart the multiverse, and he's now the captain of a Defiant-class ship called the Anaximander. And his crew includes alternate versions of T'Pol, Curzon Dax, Elam Garak, and the long-term medical holographic program based on Dr. Julian Bashir, all from different realities. But their crew is mostly just made up of lots of Harry Kims, all of whom are still ensigns. Then they rescue a new Harry Kim who's actually a lieutenant junior grade. They also rescue an engineer version of Mariner, and it turns out that she knows how to find the person opening the quantum fissures. It so happens that whenever that person opens one fissure, it creates a second fissure in a random spot. But they can engineer the situation so that the next fissure will open nearby, and they catch the ship that's doing all the damage. They do this, but as a result of the ensuing chase, they both end up on an alternate version of the planet Quopa, where the primitive salamander-like alternate Quopians take them prisoner. In prison, they meet an alternate version of Lily Sloan, who, instead of helping Zephyr Cochrane build the first warp drive, helped him build the first quantum reality drive, and she has no idea about the second holes they've been tearing in each reality. They're just trying to explore. And she offers to return everyone to their home realities. The crews then team up and escape from prison and start repairing Lily's ship, but before repairs can be completed, her ship is stolen by the Harry Kims under the leadership of Lieutenant Kim, who wants to take the other Kims back to his reality where they'll be slightly more appreciated and can rank up. Meanwhile, the others pursue in the Anaximander, but they have to battle the Quopians to board it, and Curzon Dax is fatally injured, so T'Pol absorbs the Katras of Dax and all its former hosts. The ensign Harry Kims mutiny against Lieutenant Kim, so he beams them back to the Anaximander. Lieutenant Kim opens a new fissure to a new universe, but they warn him that because the repairs weren't completed, he won't make it. And in fact, his ship will detonate and unleash a shockwave that will destroy all quantum realities. Lieutenant Kim doesn't believe them, goes into the rift, and his ship blows up. But the Anaximander is capable of channeling the energy of the explosion into a single universe, and they send it into the one that William Boimler came from, along with a message to let Brad Boimler know what's happening so he and the lower deckers can find a solution. William says everything will be fine as long as Brad doesn't freak out, so we cut back to the Cerritos where Brad receives the message, screams, "We're all gonna die," and freaks out. The end.
Father, what'd you think of this one?
Really loved this episode. I thought it was a great way to set up a finale, to really be part of that finale. All sorts of callbacks to other series and other characters, and just one that, all around very enjoyable. The whole idea of, an abundance of Harry Kims, all of whom, except for one, are ensigns, I thought was just an absolutely hilarious point in the whole thing as well.
I thought they could have called this like a pocket full of Harrys or something like that. Would have been a great, great episode title. How about you, Jimmy? What'd you think of this one?
I really liked it. I went into this cold. I was not spoiled on this. I knew the title was Fissure Quest, so I knew it was going to be related to the season arc. I had learned earlier that we were going to be getting Harry Kim this season, and I thought that was interesting. I wasn't really thinking about it going into this, but I had no idea that we were going to get Jolene Blaylock as T'Pol again, and we were going to get Andrew Robinson as Garrick and Alexander Siddig as the long-term hologram based on Dr. Bashir, and we even got Curzon Dax, although he's played by a new voice. So it was great getting to see all of these returning characters that I had not expected to see again.
Yeah, Dax was Fred Tatasciore, who does Shax's voice.
Yeah.
So I agree. This was fun. It was unexpected. I didn't think we would get like this major, reveal of what's going on with the season arc from an alternate reality crew. Although now it makes sense. It's always fun when they Lower Decks. This is one of the great things Lower Decks does, is bring back characters and actors from other Star Trek series and gives them a chance to interact and to be part of. It's one of the things I'm sad about losing with Lower Decks going away. I was a little confused early on about whether this was actually the William Boimler from the Prime reality or not.
It is.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So I'm glad you cleared that one up for me, Jimmy. But lots to like in this one. A few, bumps in the road, but lots to like in this one. And I do want to point out Anaximander. Jimmy, you probably know this. Is a Greek philosopher.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. In fact, I was going to comment on both of the ship names in this, because we've got the Anaximander, and then Lily Sloan's ship is the Beagle, and both of those names are significant. The Beagle was the ship that Charles Darwin sailed on, that led to his publication of The Origin of Species. Anaximander was a pre-Socratic philosopher, meaning he was a Greek philosopher before the time of Socrates. He was a contemporary of Thales, who is kind of the founding Greek philosopher. And Anaximander is like all of the pre-Socratics. He was interested in the question of what is stuff made of? What is the fundamental substance? And so like Thales thought that everything is a form of water. So, because water can be a liquid, a solid, or a gas. So maybe you could explain all of the matter we see around us in terms of water. But other Greek philosophers had other theories, like Heraclitus had another theory and so forth. And Anaximander's theory was that everything is made out of a substance he called the infinite. Because one of the things they noted, like this is a potential critique of Thales' theory, is water can only ever be wet. It can't be dry. And so Anaximander proposed that the infinite would embrace all of the opposites, like hot and cold and wet and dry, and then different bits of matter would fall out of that. He also came up with the idea that the world is not supported by anything, that it's free floating, instead of being like Thales thought the world floated on water. But Anaximander, perhaps because of the fact you can see the stars orbit below the Earth and then come back up in the east, that suggests the Earth is surrounded by a void. And so he proposed that the Earth is, we don't know that was one of his arguments, but he proposed that the world is floating in a void. And he proposed there are infinite worlds.
Oh, wow.
So that infinite worlds have come into and go out of existence. And so having his name be the ship that explores the infinite quantum realities makes total sense.
Oh, that's good. That's good. Excellent. That's it's the writers of Lower Decks. They sometimes pull a surprise out. It's a nice little Easter egg.
I also like how it just goes by in a line of dialogue, but in the new era of Discovery, they have abbreviated ship nicknames. So like you see them on shirts and stuff. So like Discovery has Disco for Discovery, and the Cerritos has Ritos, and it goes by in a line of dialogue that William Boimler has, but Nax is the shortened version of the Anaximander.
Yep. So we talked a little bit in your recap about the crew of the Anaximander. So in addition to William Boimler, we've got T'Pol, who we're told has become an expert on human emotions after being married to Trip Tucker for decades. I think she said 63 years.
Yeah, this is one of the things they're doing is responding to a lot of fan criticisms.
Right.
Yeah.
Like, why is Harry Kim always an ensign? So they're taking that on. And why does T'Pol and Trip's relationship get ended and then he gets killed? Well, here it didn't.
Yeah. Right. Yeah, reminding me of Trip Tucker dying. One of the things I disliked about Enterprise.
And I'm convinced he didn't die. All we saw is him going into a machine. No body, no death.
Exactly. That's the even with Star Wars, like even you have a body, there's no death. Curzon never became Jadzia, somehow survived in his reality, and he's violently Klingon. Like he's very Klingon-ish.
Which is consistent with the way Jadzia described him, that he was a big Klingon guy. And the way they said it in this episode is that he hadn't yet given the Dax symbiont to Jadzia. So I'm suspecting we may get Terry Farrell next episode as Jadzia Dax.
That'd be interesting. Although the Dax, the symbiont from that reality died, so that's why T'Pol had to absorb all of the memories of the Dax symbiont.
Yeah, but they're setting us up. I'm anticipating that they're setting us up for she's going to transfer those.
Oh, okay.
They're going to do a search for Spock where they get the Dax symbiont's body and reunite it with its Katras.
I see. That would be interesting.
I mean, just T'Pol do a mind melt with Jadzia, the unjoined Jadzia, not with any symbiont, but transfer the Katra to Jadzia that way without even having the Trill joining, I guess.
That's true. You could, I mean, it's another one of those things that fans would like to have fixed, I think, is having Terry Farrell brought back because of her ignominious departure from Deep Space Nine.
Although I loved Ezri as a replacement. I thought they did a bang-up job with her.
Yeah, agreed. Yeah, she was a good replacement. And so then we have...
I love Ezri's perspective and how different it is than Jadzia's. Like when she's sitting with Worf and says, Curzon couldn't see this because he was too close, and Jadzia was following Curzon, but the Klingon Empire is dying, and frankly, I think it deserves to die. Whoa, that's okay. New perspective here.
Yeah, she was, and she was. This is not Deep Space Nine discussion, but she was really interesting as different from Jadzia, but yet retained parts of her, and I really liked that they really leaned into that, and having Worf trying to figure out how do I navigate the fact that something of my wife survives in this person, but isn't her. That was great. That was a great aspect of DS9. So we got Garrick, who's a Starfleet doctor. Somehow, for some reason, he in his reality, he joined Starfleet and became a doctor.
Apparently, after being in the Obsidian Order, he became a doctor instead of a tailor because he still has his assassination skills. Yes, yeah,
and we have the EMH from yet another reality was patterned on Bashir as opposed to any of the other EMHs, because we had a couple different EMHs.
Well, they're
Voyager, right?
They're not the one that's based on Dr. Bashir is not an EMH. It's a long-term hologram, not an emergency hologram.
You remember the Deep Space Nine episode where they had Dr. Lewis Zimmerman come on board to try to create a long-term medical hologram based on Bashir, and that project got shelved, as it were, I guess, when they found out Bashir had been genetically engineered. But you can imagine, some copy of that surviving, or some dimension in which that did not get shelved, but he instead was created that way.
Yeah, because it got shelved because his mom walked in and blurted out the fact he's genetically engineered. So in some reality, she just didn't walk in and do that.
Exactly.
Yeah. That's funny. Yeah, I say EMH because that's what Memory Alpha gets. That Probably should edit that summary on Memory Alpha then and fix it. And then, of course, you mentioned the crew of Harry Kim's, all ensigns except the one they rescue, who turns out to be a full lieutenant. And something about
lieutenant junior grade.
No, he had 2 pips, so full lieutenant, 2 gold pips.
Okay,
yeah, if it's a gold pip and a black pip, it's junior grade. But in any case, he's a lieutenant of some sort, and it kind of breaks his brain. It kind of drives him crazy and makes him irrational. This idea that in every reality but his Harry Kim doesn't advance, doesn't succeed. And that's kind of the, one of the things fans pointed out about Voyager was everybody got a promotion, but Harry. Like Harry was the one crewman who doesn't ever get a promotion to anything. It arguably deserved it. I mean, he was just as instrumental in success of the ship in its various missions as anyone, but just Harry was always ensign. Yeah, I think that may have also been related to possibly some off-screen things at the time, because Garrett Wang, he also wanted to direct, but one of the things that they did in terms of letting actors direct was they wanted you to be really professional as an actor before they let you branch out. And Garrett Wang at the time had a reputation for kind of slacking off, and so that may have been partly, he may have also not gotten an on-screen promotion for that reason too, I can imagine. I think that's funny. They won't promote your character because you personally are not deserving.
That's like, there was a story I read online at one point that Will Wheaton was pushing for a raise on Next Generation, and producers came back and said, well, we can't really give you a raise, but how about instead we promote your character, to lieutenant? And he said, oh, great. Then I'll tell my landlord, I can't pay the rent, but hey, I'm a lieutenant now.
I liked one thing they did in this at the end when they're warning Harry Kim, the Lieutenant Kim, that his ship won't survive going through. Lily tells him, she has this technobabble explanation, which actually is not related to anything they've said before on the show. But she says that the Beagle can't handle 5 dimensions without subspace gluons, and which is just mindless technobabble.
Gibberish.
They've just invented for the moment. They've never said any of this before, so it's not even established. And Lieutenant Kim's reaction is, you can't use science gobbledygook on me. I've got 2 pips.
I also like when he first shows up, the other Kims are betting, did your Voyager get back from the Alpha Quadrant, or did you guys settle there?
Which was an initial choice they faced way back in the Caretaker.
Yep.
And one of those questions was, what happened to your Tuvix?
Yeah.
That went by quick. People might have missed that. That was good too. So you mentioned Lily, who was again played by the original actress Alfred Woodward, and I like the fact that they went in a different direction with the quote unquote villain here, which is, we had Nick Locarno last season as the villain, and he was villainous. But in this one, it turns out that the person causing all this trouble, they're not villains. They're just a different kind of Starfleet that instead of exploring space, they're exploring realities with the multiverse and unintentionally causing damage, which is what we had in Next Gen. Remember when we had the Warp 10 slowdown because they realized that warp drive was damaging reality, which was a terrible storyline. But
and they quickly forgot about it really quick. But that leads to one of the major themes in this, which is William Boimler is sick of alternate realities. And in fact, early on, he says that's all the multiverse is, just lazy derivative remixes. And
Marvel Universe.
Well, and that tends to be the way they handle it on Star Trek. Exactly. After that first Mirror Universe episode, everything is just, with very few exceptions, whenever we meet an alternate reality, it's a remix of something we've already seen. And that is fun, but and they play it really well sometimes, like in that episode where Worf is hopping quantum realities, you know, and they run into a ship that is, you know, captained by Riker that's from a universe where the Borg have taken over, and just little brief interaction with that. It's like, that is riveting. But it tends to always be a universe that's very similar to ones we already know. And I like how they upend the expectations here in two respects. First one being that it turns out that the villain is not a villain. And so it's not just, I mean, he mentions it could be, he's speculated on what it might be. It might be a reverse Picard, whatever that is, or a Borgified Kirk, or a human Worf or something. And it's not any of those things. It's just the fellow explorers who are having an unintentional side effect. And they have that moment between Lily and William where she says, "You sound a lot like Zeph," Zephyr Cochrane, because he was very skeptical of what he was building too. So apparently the Zephyr Cochrane who built the quantum drive also was skeptical of what he was building. And Lily says it took him a minute to get it too, but what they're doing is exploring the potential that humans have by looking at all the different ways that humans can be. And that's a nice alternative perspective to excuse lazy writing.
Yeah. The Lily Sloan, though, didn't she say that Cochrane helped her build the device to jump to quantum realities rather than she helping him?
Oh, could be.
I think so. I think that's what one of the things they made. The differences they made in that reality was, yes, that she was the primary driver behind it, and she was definitely wearing a Enterprise era, the original the show Enterprise era uniform. So from that Starfleet.
Although they could have played it either way, because Zephyr Cochrane could invent the device, but then he doesn't like to fly.
Right.
So
Sure. And her ship looks a lot like a Vulcan ship that we saw, in Enterprise and such. And
she had Vulcans
with her. Yeah.
In her crew. Yeah. So let's see. Then we get the Mariner comes through, and this is a different version of Mariner who is both timid and not adventurous, unlike our Mariner, our Prime Mariner, and she's an engineer and a pretty good one at that. And she's the one who comes up with the way to track whoever is causing these fissures to open, and the explanation for why they're always missing them, because it's opening up 2 fissures in each galaxy instead of 1. And so they track them down. They land on this Quopian planet, which we've seen before in the episode Much Ado About Boimler, which was the one where they built the statue to Boimler, I think it was. And but in that one, they were friendly and kind. And you mentioned like salamanders, like they kind of look like axolotls to me, but it's whatever it is. But they're very cute. These ones are feral and aggressive, and immediately capture them and start tearing things apart. So they have to cooperate together, and that's where we get that scene where they're imprisoned and have to escape. And Garrick is the one who breaks them out, because he's not just a doctor. Whereas, which in Deep Space Nine, we always got I'm not just a simple tailor. I'm not just a simple doctor. So that was fun. Let's talk about Garrick and the Bashir hologram. In this one, they make them out to be, the hologram and Bashir and Garrick are married. It's just, we the personhood of a hologram, is a whole nother question. But that one's kind of riffing off of the idea that it was kind of a fan idea, but it was. But Jimmy, you mentioned before we started that it was also sort of Andrew Robinson's idea that there was more than just friendship, at least on the part of Garrick.
Yeah, according to Andrew Robinson, when he got cast as Garrick, he decided to play Garrick as homosexually attracted to Bashir. I never saw that, watching the show. but he's said that in fan interviews, so they're picking up on that and using it here.
Yeah.
And in that way, I think they're being somewhat consistent with what they're doing, with Harry Kim and the whole non-promotion thing, because that's been a fan chatter issue. The whole thing of to Paul and being married to Trip Tucker for 63 years was kind of a fan complaint that they didn't let that marriage sort of play out longer. So in that sense, the whole thing with Bashir and Garrick here, I don't find it to be as problematic as sometimes when it feels like, okay, we have to insert a gay character in here somewhere. There has to be a gay character or a non-binary or something like that. In this case, it does seem to be at least, based in
it's based on it's based on something in the history of the show rather than just on nothing.
Right.
But I have to say, I found the execution of this one way less interesting than the Harry Kim resolution or the T'Pol resolution or the Curzon resolution.
Absolutely.
Because all they do with it is they just squabble. And it's like, this isn't really adding any. Yeah. This isn't clever.
No.
It seemed like, it went on too long. Like it's just kept coming back to it. And I kept thinking, why are we spending time on this? This is not interesting. This has nothing to do with the rest of the plot. It just does. And it didn't even feel like a cohesive B plot. It just felt like, oh, now we're going to go back to them squabbling because we as writers find it amusing somehow to have them squabble. It's like, have a squabble and then resolve it and move on.
Well, I don't know that they find it amusing that they squabble. I think it's like we've introduced this gay relationship. Now we have to explore it, and all we know to do is have them squabble.
I guess, yeah. So that was an unfortunate downside, down point of this episode. So what else to say about this one? You mentioned that Harry Kim kind of going crazy and taking the beagle and trying to get back to his reality, and he was going to bring all the Kims because because then they'd be in a reality where they could all advance. But although I'm not sure how Starfleet would like they may be happy with one Lieutenant Kim, but you've just brought me back a ship full of Kims. I'm not sure I'm ready for that.
It's too bad that they're gonna actually solve the problem next week, because I love the idea of the multiverse being destroyed by Harry Kim.
that is good.
Yeah.
So we mentioned Curzon gets killed and T'Pol absorbs all the Katras. So that there's some question there about the symbiont and that sort of thing. But I thought the symbiont died. Well,
the symbiont may have died, and they just may do a Spock.
Right. Bring back to life. The resolution was interesting, which is they realize that in order to save all of the realities, there's a potential where you funnel it all into one reality, and that reality may get destroyed unless the people there can figure out a way to fix it. But it saves everything else except for that one reality.
Yeah, it's a little lazy. I mean, if this thing is powerful enough to destroy all realities, how is it going to be contained in one?
Yeah. That's the classic Star Trek, switcheroo at the end.
Yeah.
The other thing I found odd about the ending is, we mentioned earlier the Next Generation episode Parallels, and the Riker, the one Captain Riker that's doesn't want to go back to his universe because the Borg have, conquered everything and it's a horrible area. You kind of sympathize and understand why he doesn't want to go back to his home universe there. It's a lot harder to figure out why one Lieutenant Harry Kim would think that all these other Ensign Harry Kims need to stay away from their universes and go to his. It's obviously part of the comedy, the far-fetched nature of this series, but yeah.
Yeah, I mean, they were going to take everyone back to their original reality, and they decide,
and that's what sets Lieutenant Kim off.
Yeah, but the other Harrys seemed content to go back to their own realities. So
yeah, we don't get any sense that they're anxious for this plan. In fact, the first thing once they get him on the view screen is one of the ensign Kims butts in and says, "He tricked us. We don't want to be here."
When they first show, there was one scene where they show Lieutenant Kim kind of snarling or kind of lurking in the background, and you can tell, okay, he's going to do something here. He's going to be part of the villain, if you will, in this. I thought they were going to maybe reveal him to be a changeling infiltrator or something like that.
Yeah,
yeah.
Well, that's kind of the funny bit of it too. Is the one Harry Kim who actually can get promoted is the one who goes off his rocker and tries to destroy all of reality.
So in a sense, the big villain is a remix of someone we already know.
It's true.
Right.
It's true.
Certainly.
And it's Harry Kim, of all people. I want to go back to the beginning with Rutherford.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think there's any significance to Rutherford having trouble with his implants?
Yes.
I made a note of that as well.
Yeah. So this is in the beginning scene where Rutherford's trying to reconnect his implant to the Cerritos' systems, and he's having trouble, and it actually shoots plasma, which he says it's not supposed to do. This is picking up on something I really hope and anticipate they're going to pay off next episode, because they had, of our main characters, they had established mystery with William Boimler, because they showed us that Section 31 helped him fake his death. That was like in season 3.
Right.
And they never picked up on that. And so now they're finally picking up on that. Well, they did something similar with Rutherford, because they established that he had before he got his implants, he had a very different personality and had been part of this clandestine program that then Lieutenant Colonel Buenamiga, before he was Admiral had done. And they partly paid that off with the reveal of the Texas class ships, but they've never fully paid off what was going on with Rutherford's involvement in that program. And so I'm anticipating that they're going to do that next episode. They're finally, when they planned season 5, they looked back and said, what loose ends have we left that we can tie up? And they said, oh, well, William Boimler. And I'm guessing they also said Rutherford and this program that he was part of before he had his implants. So I'm hoping that they give us closure on that.
Because there's no loose ends left for Tendi, really, or Mariner.
Right.
Mariner, we had the girlfriend thing that they.
Well, and also telling us why her name is different than her mom's.
Right.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
So, any other notes on this episode, Father?
2 little things. One, I think on the Anaximander, all of our characters are coming from not only different dimensions, but different time periods. That's what allows William Boimler to be a little bit older and to be a captain by this point. Paul is, Vulcans are obviously long-lived, but I don't know that she would still be, I guess she could still be around from Enterprise era up to this point. But, when Boimler's log entry is Stardate confidential, I think that's one way, too, of sort of signaling we're not going to try to be pinned down to any one time period and let people sort of be brought in from different, not only different dimensions, but different times, it seems, as well. And then a little thing in the beginning, I noticed Boimler's beard has grown out completely now.
Yep.
And so, another sign that we're getting to the end of the season and we're getting to, some connection probably with the bearded Boimler from the first episode of the season.
Before, Jimmy, I asked you for your final thoughts. Something you said, Father, kind of triggered something for me, which is both Prodigy's most recent season, maybe its last, and this one have to do with alternate realities, traveling between realities. And there was a point in this episode where I thought, are we going to bring in the traveler version of Crusher, of Will Wheaton's character, Wesley? Or are we, or is it just a coincidence that both series kind of approach the same sort of subject, especially given the long lead times in the creation of animated shows and that sort of stuff?
They also both deal with threats to the multiverse.
Yeah, I thought that was interesting.
I hope they don't bring in Will Wheaton in this.
Yeah. It would be weird.
Yeah, it's too close. I mean, if he's just used to solve one series, he shouldn't come in and swoop in the last episode to solve a different series.
Right. I mean, I could see maybe bringing him in to have a comedic moment and then shooing him off somewhere, like it just like for like a brief scene or a few lines. That could be amusing, but yeah, I don't want him to be the solution. So Jimmy, just your final thoughts on this one? Any other notes?
Yeah, I liked a bunch of the little things in this episode. Like at one point they mention, when they're talking to I guess it's the engineer version of Mariner, she mentions that in her universe, Deanna Troi was transporter duplicated and stranded on a planet for years. And William says, yeah, that happened to our Riker.
Yeah.
Also, when Engineer Mariner is talking to T'Pol, she mentions her Boimler, and T'Pol says, we didn't have a Boimler in my reality, and Mariner says, oh, he's a big Starfleet nerd like Archer. You had one of those, right? and she says, yes, and big Starfleet nerd is an accurate description.
Those are good.
Yeah.
All right. Excellent. So I think that does it for this time. And as we wrap things up, I want to take a moment to thank our patrons who make it possible for us to create the Secrets of Star Trek, including Allison M., John, Mary L., Jordan S., and Maximilian S. They're generous, tax-deductible donations. That's important at the end of the year. At sqpn.com/give, make it possible for us to continue the Secrets of Star Trek and all the shows at StarQuest. And you can join them by visiting sqpn.com/give. And just as a reminder, again, we are a 501c3 nonprofit organization, so your donations are tax deductible to the fullest extent of the law applicable where you live. This StarQuest show is also brought to you by Exodus 90 and the Exodus 90 app. Men, we are called to share the hope and joy of Jesus Christ. Our family, friends, and community desperately need us to imitate our Lord to be radically present and available. What if you intentionally live this Advent season differently, focused not on buying Christmas presents, but sharing the loving presence of Jesus Christ? We want to invite you to join us on the Exodus 90 app and break out of the religion of the world. Join the men of Exodus 90 and Monsignor James Shea, president of the University of Mary, who's our spiritual guide for Advent this year on the Exodus 90 app. Together, we will rediscover the hope that God lays out for us in the coming of his Son into the world. Go to exodus90.com/SQPN to learn more about Advent on the Exodus 90 app. That's exodus90.com/SQPN to join men from around the world this Advent starting December 1st. Be radically free in Jesus Christ this Advent. So that's it from us. What did you think of this penultimate episode of Lower Decks called Fissure Quest? You can let us know by commenting on the show at sqpn.com/trek, our Facebook page, facebook.com/StarQuestMedia. Send an email to trek@sqpn.com or visit our Discord community at sqpn.com/Discord. And you can watch The Secrets of Star Trek on our YouTube channel at youtube.com/StarQuestMedia. We'll be back next time when we're discussing the final episode of Lower Decks called The New Next Generation. And until then, Jimmy Akin, thank you for joining me and sharing The Secrets of Star Trek.
Thanks, Tom.
Father Jason Tyler, thank you as well.
Thanks, Dom.
And once again, I'm Dom Bettinelli. Thank you for listening to The Secrets of Star Trek on StarQuest. And remember, big Starfleet nerd is an accurate description, at least for me as well.